What if the North Korean leader, Kim Jong Un, has fundamentally abandoned the goal of unification? For decades, the entire Korean peninsula was defined by this single, shared objective. This framework guided diplomacy, provided a common, albeit distant, vision for both Koreas, and often served as a diplomatic anchor. But a seismic shift is underway, one that could leave South Korea strategically isolated and fundamentally change its role in the region. The old narrative of a divided family is being replaced by a new, far more dangerous reality of two distinct, hostile nations. The world long assumed the rivalry was temporary, a pause before unity. But what if this long-standing narrative is now a relic of the past? And how is North Korea signaling this profound change to the world? Understanding the North Korean state. To grasp the magnitude of this shift, we must first understand the state of North Korea itself. Officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, North Korea is a totalitarian state led by the Kim dynasty, a family that has held absolute power since the nation's founding. After centuries as a unified nation, Korea was tragically divided at the 38th parallel following World War II. The Soviet Union and the United States, two ideological rivals, became the primary sponsors of two opposing states, a communist North and a capitalist South. This division wasn't just a political boundary, it was an ideological fault line. The Korean War, from 1950 to 1953, was a brutal conflict that solidified this division, creating a heavily fortified border that remains one of the world's most tense flashpoints. Even after the war, the dream of unification persisted. Both North and South Korea enshrined the goal in their foundational documents and political rhetoric. For South Korea, the vision was one of peaceful democratic unification, often referred to as unification by absorption, where the South's economic prosperity would lead the way. This vision was rooted in the confidence that its democratic and economic success would eventually prove irresistible to the North. For North Korea's authoritarian leadership, however, this was an existential threat. The North saw unification only on its own terms, a liberation of the South under its own communist system. This created a paradoxical dynamic. Both sides wanted to be one nation, but they were locked in a constant, bitter struggle over who would lead that future. Today, North Korea is a global outlier. It is one of the most closed societies on Earth, with a command economy that has struggled for decades under severe international sanctions. It is internationally condemned for its dire human rights record, and, most significantly, for its relentless pursuit of nuclear weapons. This aggressive nuclear program has defined its relationship with the world, making it a pariah state for many. However, through this lens of isolation and hostility, we can now see a new strategy emerging. What happens when one of the two players decides the game is no longer about winning, but about ending the game entirely? The new triad, an alliance of convenience, not ideology. Historically, North Korea's diplomacy was based on equidistance, playing major powers against each other to maximize its own benefit. But under Kim Jong Un, this strategy has been decisively abandoned. Instead, we are witnessing a new and strengthened alliance with China and Russia, a clear sign of a new anti-Western bloc. The 2025 Beijing Victory Day Parade was a powerful, public testament to this shift. The symbolic image of Kim Jong Un, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin standing together on a public stage wasn't just a coincidence. It was a deliberate statement to the world, signaling North Korea's return to the international stage and its alignment with a new geopolitical order. This alliance is more than just symbolic. It's intensely transactional, and each nation has its own motives. While they present a united front against the U.S. and its allies, they are not a monolithic bloc. China, as the world's second-largest economy, seeks to solidify its position as a global superpower. It provides crucial economic support to both Russia and North Korea, but is wary of their growing closeness. China has its own ambitions in the Russian Far East, where it has been increasing its economic influence and land acquisitions in cities like Vladivostok. Russia, while reliant on China for energy exports to offset Western sanctions, is uncomfortable with Beijing's growing dominance. It sees a strategic partnership with North Korea as a way to counterbalance China's influence in the region. Russia provides North Korea with much-needed food, fuel, and, most critically, advanced military and space technology, which China has been more reluctant to offer. This creates a more diversified source of support for Pyongyang. North Korea, for its part, is no longer content to be a vassal state. It has moved beyond the confines of the Korean Peninsula by strengthening its ties with Russia. This allows it to raise its strategic value, receive a new lifeline of aid, and gain leverage not just over the U.S. but over China as well. There is even the potential for North Korea to participate in future reconstruction projects in a post-Ukraine war Russia, creating a long-term economic partnership that could lessen its dependence on Beijing. So while the three nations have aligned to counter the U.S. and its allies, this is a strategic arrangement born of necessity, not shared ideology. Each country is pursuing its own distinct national interest, creating a complex and, at times, precarious partnership. The strategic ditching of the South. North Korea's most dramatic move has been the official abandonment of the unification goal. While the official constitutional amendment removing all references to unification is forthcoming, the doctrine has been clearly stated. Kim Jong Un has repeatedly declared that the relationship is one of two hostile states in a state of war, and has officially designated South Korea as its principal enemy. This radical shift isn't just a change in rhetoric, it's a fundamental change in doctrine. By declaring a two hostile states policy, Kim Jong Un is no longer bound by the diplomatic constraints of a shared identity with the South. This radical move achieves several key goals for the regime. Internal control. It solidifies his regime internally by fueling anti-South sentiment, which helps justify the country's intense focus on military development and diverts attention from domestic struggles. This narrative of a permanent, dangerous enemy allows the regime to maintain a tight grip on power without the pretense of a future reconciliation. Military justification. It justifies military actions against the South without the pretense of national reconciliation or civil war. Any future aggression can simply be framed as conflict between two sovereign hostile nations, changing the narrative from an internal conflict to an international one. Diplomatic freedom. The message to the international community is now clear. North Korea is a sovereign nuclear state that will deal directly with global powers, bypassing Seoul entirely. North Korea is actively seeking direct, bilateral talks with the U.S. and Japan, signaling that it no longer views South Korea as a relevant diplomatic partner in the core security calculus of the peninsula. The impact on South Korea's strategic position. This great reversal has left South Korea in a precarious strategic position, forcing it to confront what has been called a power vacuum in its long-term foreign policy. For decades, South Korea's diplomacy was built on the foundation of reunification. Now, with North Korea's pivot, that foundation is gone. South Korea risks losing its traditional role as the primary mediator on the Korean Peninsula. with North Korea's direct engagement with Russia, China, and even potentially the U.S. Seoul's diplomatic influence in any future high-stakes negotiation is diminishing. Furthermore, the deepening military cooperation between North Korea and Russia poses a direct and unprecedented threat to South Korea's security. North Korea's missile and satellite programs could advance rapidly, eroding South Korea's military advantage. More ominously, the new strategic partnership between Moscow and Pyongyang could even include a clause for automatic military intervention in the event of conflict, a chilling scenario that would drastically change the strategic calculus on the peninsula and bring a major global power into any local confrontation. Conclusion: a crossroads for the Korean Peninsula. The era of a divided nation striving for one future is over. It has been replaced by a new reality of two openly hostile, heavily armed states. North Korea's bold new strategy, forging a new anti-Western alliance and officially rejecting unification, has fundamentally reshaped the Korean Peninsula and, by extension, the regional balance of power in East Asia. The next chapter of the Korean Peninsula will be one of increasing division and strategic competition, defined not by reconciliation but by rivalry. The question remains, is South Korea ready for a game it didn't even know was being played?